Hello, and welcome to Purpose Beyond the Page. I am here today with Toby Usnik, and we are talking about from caring to connection, purpose, legacy, in the human side of AI. Welcome, Toby.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to be in contact with you and chatting today, Jen.
Yeah, we were just obviously talking before we went live, and I feel like even just the title of this conversation, from caring to connection, clearly there's an origin for why I named it that way. So I would love to have you kind of start off by sharing a little bit about your background, a little bit about your books, and then we can kind of dive into all of these other amazing topics.
Sure. As I'm looking at the title, Caring Connection, I'm reminded, is it called a Mobius strip? It's like an figure
Like the
eight.
infinity loop.
Yeah, I think that's what comes to mind visually with me for caring and connection. They are just, they're infinite and they're entwined, and they're, I don't know, kind of smooth and interesting. I am Toby Usnik, a middle class kid who grew up in a family of five boys, and for reasons I won't bore you with, my family, with my stepdad's job, took us on the road every 2 years we moved. So I grew up all around the U.S. and was able to be exposed to a lot of different cultures and people along the way, and that sparked in me as far back as I can remember a real desire and interest, a passion for the international and for the other. So that's what really has defined my whole career and my books. I've always been an internationalist. I've tried to live, work, study outside of the country. I thrive in multinational matrix settings and corporations. And my books, my podcasts, my Funkle Toby on TikTok, and my LinkedIn stuff is always about leading a purpose-driven life and career, and doing it in a way that is really so obvious to you and those around you that it is a clarion call. When you're on mission in life, as you know, Jen, and what you're doing. And it's something that's so clear and evident that people know they either need you on their team or they need to get out of your way because you are a determined doer. And so most of my career, as I said, was looking on the international. So I finished a lot of undergraduate and graduate study, living and working abroad, Paris, Austria, Belgium. And then when I finished all of my graduate studies, I thought I was going to work in international and comparative education until I got to the actual writing of my dissertation and realized, nearing 30 years of age, I might be in school forever. So I did a pivot. I started working with a friend of mine who was an executive recruiter. And long story short, he put me in a public affairs or PR role at American Express. And I was director of international public affairs there for 5 years. And then the internet thing was happening, and I was recruited to run communications for a digital startup called Razorfish, which is still around, now owned by Microsoft. Then the bubble burst, and I was out of a job. And that happens in life, as we all know. But what you do with it is what really matters. And then I went, Corn Ferry placed me at the New York Times. So I was there for 5 years as director of public relations. And it was an exciting time. I was there for 9/11. I was there for Sandy. I was there for the Jason Blair plagiarism scandal, which almost broke the Times. And then I got recruited to Christie's to run communications there for 10 years. And as a liberal arts and science guy and a generalist by nature, I love encyclopedic institutions and people, whether it's the Met or the Louvre. I was enthralled for 10 years running communications and then building the corporate social responsibility program there called Art and Soul. And spent 10 years there. And then about almost 10 years ago now, I left there to work on my own and consulting around social impact and comms, but particularly in China. I spent a lot of time in mainland China over about 5 years before COVID. And the reason for that was that I really do believe in the Chinese people and their commitment to bettering themselves and trying to help this new wealth generation be more philanthropic, more responsible, more social impact oriented was my goal until I got stalled with COVID, and then came back and was working for 3 years. Well, for a brief second, I was a test and trace supervisor for the health and for the health New York Health and Hospital Corporation, because you may remember New York was ground zero for COVID, and we had something called test and trace, where when people were exposed, we had to actually try to identify not only who was exposed, but who had they exposed. So I supervised a group of field workers in Queens,
Oh, wow.
a borough here in New York. And then while they are about 6 months in, I saw and applied for and got a job as head of communications for the British consulate here in New York. So I ran that for 3 years, left there about a year ago. And now I've been doing project work with the Sovereign Fund of Saudi Arabia on arts and culture sponsorship. I have an arts com group where I work with 86 of the leading cultural institutions in New York to help us steward the cultural patrimony of New York through generations. And that's big and small, from Met and Guggenheim and MoMA to the Moth and St. Anne's Warehouse and 92nd Street Y.
Wow.
And I've written a couple more books. I wrote Connecting the Dots, Building Your Network and Legacy with my co-author and co-pilot, Samir Kanuga, about how one builds one's network and legacy, both in an analog and digital way.
Mhm.
And that was a fun one because it builds on this mission I have of trying to make a positive difference through daily discovery and adventure. So all the coaching and teaching and mentoring I do, and my podcast now in its 19th season, I'm trying to help people. But I'm also very passionate about not just growing your followers or your audience, but to what end do any of us do anything? And
Yeah.
so that's why the legacy piece is so important to me. I think you could ask a 3-year-old kid what they want to be remembered for, and they can conceive of that and try to think about it. And as you well know, given the work you do and the life you've led, Jen, those who have a sense of purpose or a mission, a higher calling, life is going to be much more efficient and effective because they have a clarifying sort of way of looking at the world. It's not that you ignore things or dismiss people, but what you do is you try and make sure that everything you're doing is additive to that. So that's where I am in my life right now.
Mhm.
I'm still from time to time applying for comms roles in multinationals, but I also do a lot of great project work, and I am teaching a lot of AI. And I fell into that just like everyone else because we were exposed to it
Mhm.
with the advent of ChatGPT and OpenAI almost 3 years ago.
Mhm.
And boy, I am surprised now, 3 years on, how few people are really engaging with it in a positive way or at all. And that's where I come in because they know they can trust me, and I help them, and then I leave them the tools, and it's teach a man or a woman to fish versus just
Mhm.
doing it for them. And I also love bringing people joy. So when you help marry someone's concept of joy and
Mhm.
reconcile it with their career, how are they going to pay the bills? And you give them a tool like AI to really start to close that gap. It doesn't matter if you ever fully close it, as long as we help others find their or define their mission, give them some tools and instruction to help move toward it. You have forever touched someone's life in the best positive way. And then that ripple effect is going to continue because they're on mission, as you are with your show. You're helping others, authors and others, keep on paying it forward. And
Mhm.
that's the beauty of it. And I would go so far, not to sound arrogant, but I would go so far as to say that I know this. I don't even think this. I've seen it over and over again. I have people in my life from 20, 30 years ago because of the way I managed them or the way I mentored them. And that justifies these wrinkles.
Yeah, wow, you have said so much in already such a short period of time. Because even when we had a conversation over the summer and we were both just nerding out over AI, and
Yeah.
we're down quite a fun path about just AI's transformation and what's happening in the world. And, as you were talking about like your books and then saying, that, OpenAI has been around for, 3 years now. I am in the process of putting together my next book that will be out in February. And I was looking at some of the materials from my last book, which came out in October of 2023. And
Mm,
in it, I was helping people just generate testimonials for my book using AI. And I had it in there where I had to have like a description of what ChatGPT was and like what it meant. And I'm like, wow, we have come so far. And I would say probably half the people that I work with still are not using AI. And I
wow.
find that to be almost mind boggling if you're
Yeah.
someone who is showing up in the world as a thought leader, which everyone who's writing a book is a thought leader on something. So for thought leaders to not be leading the way in using AI when there's other people who maybe that's not their thing. They're not kind of putting out content into the world, but they're using AI on a
Mm,
day-to-day basis to solve problems that maybe otherwise wouldn't be easily solvable. We just went down that kind of very deep conversation. That's when I was like, "Ooh, I know who I want to have this conversation with," especially when we can weave in purpose, right? Because
mhm,
everything I do is centered in purpose and helping people figure out what their purpose is. And AI is now making that exponentially easier
mhm.
as well.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I like you, I looked back at an interview I did about 2 years ago with on my podcast, The Caring Economy, with Marty Chavez, who had been CIO and CFO at Goldman Sachs for many years, out gay, Latino, and his brainiac family, all five of the kids, blue collar, went to Harvard from Albuquerque. And he got the MBA, the BA, the AB, the PhD, the MD. He's one of those exceptional people.
Yeah.
But we talked about the concept of AI then, 2 years ago. And he said a couple of things that just really I'll share with you because they blew my mind. One was, if you think this is something, just wait because it's really going to blow your mind. And 2 years later, it's still blowing my mind. He also talked, he's on the board of Alphabet, the parent of Google, so he kind of knows what he's talking about more than I do. But he also said one of the boards he sits on is a startup in Salt Lake City that is a blend of both AI and stem cell research.
Mhm.
So the volume of testing and research they're able to do now and scale for solutions to everything, and then you think about adding in a CRISPR and all these other things, like we can solve so many problems in a much shorter time frame than we ever knew. And I think that that potential gets lost
Mhm.
because of fear. And in this polarized world, we have a lot of people trying to blame each other or pull us apart. But I see AI as a great unifier because when I say AI, I typically mean the large language models like ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity and Grok and DeepSeek. But um, the large language models, the technology is neutral, as was the printing press, as was nuclear fusion. It's what we do with it. So we can never weed out human behavior, good or bad. But if we accept that humans can be on this scale of good to bad, marry that with this neutral technology of AI, then you see why I'm an evangelist now for the AI, because I want people like you and me and my family and my colleagues to be engaging and becoming what I call literate. AI literacy is it's my clarion call now. I want people to be engaged with this technology in order to help shape it, to vote for the elected officials who we can rely on to help shape it, get the regulators in that we need to be able to regulate this, get the educators on board who are going to be teaching our children about not just how to live fulfilled lives, but how to be humans, how to use technology like AI in a human centered, ethical way.
Mhm.
And there are great examples I cite in my AI 101 course of leaders in that place, such as Fei Li at Stanford, Joy Badawima, who did she did Unmasking Bias, which is a genius book about using basically Marvel action characters to be the algorithmic Justice League to uncover and show bias in these data sets. Because of course
Yeah.
these LLMs have been built largely by straight white men or Southeast Asian men. So there's bias in them,
Yeah.
but we don't have to just accept it at that, right?
Mhm.
And as you well know, the race is on. All these different companies want our data and they want our attention. So I want to have consumers be informed and help go there. The metaphor I use for my students is we've been using AI for at least a decade, Siri, Alexa,
Mhm.
streaming playlists. But with the advent of OpenAI, it was kind of like Toto pulling back the curtain on the Wizard of Oz.
Mhm.
Now we can actually see the algorithms, we can train them and work with them.
Yeah.
Every so often, I have one student who's hesitant, even after I expose them. It reminds me of Dorothy Parker from the Algonquin Round Table, who
Mhm.
famously riffed on the horse to water. She said, "You can lead a horticulture, but you can't make her think." I am trying to get as many people that I know engaged in a thoughtful 1 hour format with this technology to demystify it, to empower them, to find some joy, and as you say, to help amplify their efforts in being that purpose-driven leader and citizen and
Mhm.
human that we need to be. Humans are not going, AI is not going to take anyone's job, but the people who are conversant in AI, those are the ones who are probably going to take the jobs. But even more optimistically, I would say that most leaders that are using AI right now, they're still missing the opportunity. I think they're looking at, like we used to like Google our names when search
Mhm.
engines came out.
Mhm.
So they're looking for efficiencies, crunching data and,
Yeah.
saving time, laying people off maybe. But the real opportunity is when you get your whole organization, your whole family, your whole school really integrating AI in what I call my 5 second rule. If you spend 5 seconds like a kid dropping food on the floor, if you think of anything for 5 seconds and you can start to ask yourself, could I do something with AI around this?
Mm.
That's when you're going to be living and dreaming and thinking AI in a way that's not consuming, it's not overbearing. What it's doing is helping you become even more creative, more collaborative. That's where we're going to be able to create more solutions and opportunities, and I believe abundance. If we get all or most of our people trained using this, helping to shape it, and really remain committed to human-centered ethical use of AI. Because if we're not doing it, we already know the dark forces are out there.
Mhm.
You know, there's that guy, I forget his name, that Trump pardoned. He had 2 life sentences. He had the Silk Route, that
Mhm.
black, dark internet thing where he's doing sex trafficking and arms, munitions, and crypto. He's out on the market now. Those kinds of people are going to be out there using this technology. So I would rather have you and me and the average citizens using it to be informed, prepared, and excited.
Yeah, because the light has to counteract the dark, right? So
And there's
what
more light than dark. I really believe this.
I completely agree with you. It's just the news coverage and the media coverage covers the dark versus the light. So,
Well, because it's
we're if we
clickbait.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, and it gets us all enraged and fires us up and,
Yeah.
then they can manipulate us more. So there's a whole path there.
Yep.
What do you think, like, when you're working with people, especially in your AI program, because you have joy, you have purpose, you have legacy, you have all these like really anchoring points that are at the center of how people are using it. What do you think like the top thing is that people are the most afraid of with AI? Because I think about it from an author standpoint, and I think it seems so big and so unmanageable that they're afraid to even just like open one of the platforms and just put a prompt in. Like
Yeah.
even just that act is like a huge, huge step for them.
I'll tell you, it's an easy question. I'd first preface it by saying I think there's a spectrum, just like the light and dark. There's actually a spectrum. There's a lot of gray. Gray is okay, right? So I like to understand where my students are on that spectrum of AI familiarity. So I level set what they do, what they think it is, and then we go from that base model of large language models and the samples of Grok, Copilot, Gemini, so forth. But what I have found is there's those who are just afraid and waiting for their boss, their teacher, their parents to tell them what it is or isn't. Or there are those who think they know it all and don't need it. But those are the ones that come back a year later and say, you know what, you're right. Like it's not just for my secretary kind of thing. But I think it's fear based ignorance. Like it's actually, I think, self-imposed ignorance because fear keeps people away. They're waiting for their boss or someone else to tell them. They're fearful about privacy. I say approach it the same way as the internet. I wouldn't put social security numbers or confidential things in a search. Same thing here. But what I love to do is help people realize that it's a neutral technology. It's not good or bad. It's what you do with it. And I have a way of being able to draw them into it because all of my exercises with them are each hour I spend with someone is 2 to 3 set topics that are germane to them, whether it's my teenage daughter's about pregnant, I don't know what to do, or I want to get ready to negotiate my review of my employment contract, or um, I find it really helpful for young people. I do a lot of coaching of young people, and we say in the line of communication, PR, what does success look like? And in my line of work, it's the press release. I guest lectured a group of 30 NYU undergrads in communications course last fall, and I asked them where they're from, and then how much do you use AI? And I said, all right, laptops up. I said, what's your favorite company or dream job? And then I just had them prompt to write a press release announcing their appointment. And in 30 seconds, everyone, and these students are from Russia, China, all Colombia, all around the world, they had a press release in the proper format with the
Mhm.
boilerplate, the quotes, the headlines, and by God, every one of them had accurate information about themselves. So
Yeah.
it goes back to the idea of like if she can be it, if she can see it, she can be it.
Yep.
A press release, it doesn't really make it true, but it helps you get there if you see it. And as you know from your work, then it's even more amazing when you say, all right, now like write the pitch letter or the text, the hashtags or the post, and then also put it in Portuguese 'cause I'm going to send it back to Brazil. And people are like, oh my God, is
Mhm.
that going to take someone's job? Yeah, maybe, but I'd rather have the team that work for me get the PowerPoint done, the press release done, and then spend their time out on the calls, talking to the journalists and bringing the story to life, or thinking more creatively. That's where we're going to go to an era of abundance. I know it and I see it. My last book that I wrote, Connecting Dots, was co-authored with my friend Samir. He lives in Arizona. I live here, and we're both pilots. He was our safety instructor, and we were flying to Arizona a couple years ago. We were selling our Cessna, and we're over Wichita, which is where Cessna's headquarters. He says, Toby, I've been with you for 10 years. He was an MBA student then. Now he's a CFO of a company. He said, I want to know how do you network? Because it's just unbelievable. I said, you know what, Samir? We had it on autopilot. I was flying. I said, put your iPad away. And I said, why don't we just write a book together? So
Mhm.
within 6 months, using AI, which was part of the story in connecting the dots, as you'll see if you read it, um, we were able to create this book. And we use the metaphor of piloting throughout, connecting the dots, almost like your fuel stops along the way. And you
Mhm.
treat your reputational currency the same way you do all souls on your ship, right?
Mhm.
So that allowed us to be even more collaborative, more creative, get the book out, in a sense, scale our knowledge, which is the revolution that is AI, right?
Yeah.
This technological revolution is scaling AI. Sorry, this technological revolution is scaling knowledge in the same way that automation, cars and vehicles scaled mobility, right?
Mhm.
Or the printing press scaled this fusion of knowledge.
Mhm.
So, why aren't people bringing to bear on anything they're thinking about all the universe of knowledge that is out there to have a more objective, informed
Mhm.
thought process?
Yeah. And I think about the people who are, afraid that AI is going to take their job and, using the press release as an example. My background has always been in marketing. I've been doing it for over 20 years at this point. And I remember writing press releases. When I was like 23, working for an insurance company, and they would have been so much better suited of my time and my brain power being used to actually solve different marketing problems than the monotony of writing a press release. So I think that's such an easy, quick example of just because you might have writing press releases as part of your current job description, that is not going to be what is replacing you. Your lack of adapting and evolving with what's happening is going to be what replaces you, not because you're using AI. If anything, I think people are going to get hired in more quantities by those who are using AI, because then the person hiring them is going to see that they're going to be far more efficient. And like you're saying, you're getting that vast level of knowledge
Yeah,
that you didn't have otherwise. Like it's a superpower, it's a strength rather than being this kind of like ball and chain
yeah.
like people
It's a
think it
way
is.
of thinking. Yeah. You know
Mhm.
who doesn't read press releases? Journalists.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
clearly, like it's diminishing returns. But I
Mhm.
love to challenge people. Like if you can put it in a subject line, you're likely to. That's all you're going to get, right? So I love to challenge people to put like a haiku in a subject line,
Mhm.
or a Shakespearean verse in the pitch, because that cuts through the clutter. That
Yeah.
might get them to say, "Tell me more." But also, if you get, like, I would love to see, I call it AI forward. I would like to see the first PR firm to be AI forward, and in so doing that, they are getting rid of all the old tools, including press releases, and
Mhm.
they're finding new ways to integrate AI, such as, we're in this with we're entering the agentic era, the agency. So you can now create agents to do the things that people might do. So why not get your staff at a small boutique firm that's lean and mean to run with that? How are we going to be more agentic at our firm? And how are we going to be thought leaders and doers using this technology? I have some ideas now, but think about if you got your whole team thinking that way and they're
Mhm.
coming in and asking, like, we have no idea how it's going to play out, but it could be really positive and set the trend, or lead. But
Mhm.
I'm excited by it, not afraid. People who are afraid of it, I think, are ones who should be using it, because they could workshop their fears and start to
Mhm.
think about what their opportunities are, and realize that they're not alone. So all these people I teach, I won't name one, very famous, very successful editor of, you would know, touches anyway, what I realized when I taught him a couple weeks ago is, because he knows me all these years and can trust me, he could confide in me that he doesn't know anything and he's afraid, right?
Mm.
Because people don't want to admit that they don't know. But I find the more you can help them and the more they can work with it, the better off everybody is.
Mhm. And I think if people could just see Like, if just trying to take away, like, all of the potential that AI has because it is enormous and unwieldy, but even just thinking about how we were using Google before, like, how much of a pain it is because then you have to read the one article, and now you're gonna find another article because this one talked about this, now you don't know this, versus, I was, my son and I were out, shopping for Halloween decor recently, and we found this big fluffy spider-looking thing. I was like, "What do you wanna name it?" And he's like, "Margaret." I was like, "Perfect, let's call her Peggy." And he looks at me, he's 17, he's like, "Why are you saying Peggy?" I'm like, "I don't know." I'm like, "Peggy is short for Margaret." And so I open up ChatGPT on my phone and it gives me the entire history and it's talking about how Richard became Dick and like it's going through this whole thing.
Yeah,
And I'm thinking,
nicknames.
had I had to go to Google before to ask this, sure, I could have found an article. But like I was able to give him this entire history of how names have transformed over hundreds of years. And it's just like such a small little example that, like, even if we could get people to do something like that, something that there's no stake to it, right? Like you're
Yeah.
just asking a question that really has no bearing on your life.
Well, and how old is your son?
17.
So what I would say then is you go even further, you could say, all right, and now if he studies Spanish or French in school, it's the diminutives, right? Ita in
Mhm,
Spanish or
mhm,
it or et or ita in Italian. So this is a cultural thing that also it translates in other ways around the world,
mhm,
but you can go big or small. So yes, I love that instant response. Two examples I would give you about families. One is I was coaching a mom and her son joined us, and he's a senior in Connecticut, going off to a tennis player, going off to Georgetown, and they have a summer home in Bridgehampton. So the more mom was like, I'm afraid he's not going to get a job because of AI, and well, I just finally said, you know what? I quickly wrote a book proposal and a 12 chapter outline with a paragraph on each chapter and cover art for from Bridgehampton to Georgetown, a mother-son essay or study in the college application process, because their particular and your son's in your particular is also universal.
mhm,
So whether it's for joy or fear or education, I like to help people realize with AI, again, scaling knowledge, that it is so important to you and it's everything to you at this moment in time, but you can also either bring more joy or detox it or make it less stressful when you realize there's a universality here. And
mhm,
that helps, particularly with crises, which I think is a really underused tool right now by families dealing with coaching and child issues. The other one to that point is my friend Al's 8-year-old son, John, doesn't like to take his shower at 8 o'clock every night and get ready for bed. But what he does love is this TV show or cartoon called The Thundercats. So,
mhm,
long story short, we've now, and he's got a touch of ADHD. So, we created a cartoon character. Each day it can be a four-quadrant cartoon, and it's Jean and the Thundercats. And each
mhm,
day we work in, what does the hero do today? Well, he gets ready for bed, he takes a
mhm,
shower, whatever. So, Jean has something to look forward to. It's better than putting an iPad in front of him.
yeah,
He is now the hero in the narrative.
mhm,
Al and his wife are not, I think, not only having fun with this, but then the neighbors are, I'd like to think the neighbors are soon going to be saying, like, what are you doing with your kid to get him to sleep like that?
yeah,
And then they can take each story, whether it's once a week or once a night, and send it to grandma. And then when
mhm,
Jean gets married one day, they can give him the whole book of Jean's,
yeah,
like parents would put the height of the kids on the walls. But
yeah,
there's so many different ways you could use these tools to make parenting easier. I'm not taking away the difficulties of it, but it's a way of thinking and leveraging the technology, and it's decidedly interactive, right?
mhm,
This is not passive technology. It can be, but I want people to be engaged with it and training their algorithms.
mhm,
And younger people know that they know we're in the surveillance economy, as Karen Howe says in the Empire of AI. Kids tend to know more that we're being surveilled and monetized and
mhm,
captured and crunched, right? So that's not a bad place to begin, because then it'll keep you from putting sensitive things in like passwords or social security,
mhm,
but it will also get you less afraid, I think.
mhm.
Again, Toto pulling back the curtain on the Wizard of Oz, who's kind of like fidgeting behind the curtain.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think if people can just start with some of these smaller things, eventually they can start to get comfortable with it and do more of the complex things. I know for myself, it was probably like a year ago where I basically asked my AI, I'm like, who do you think I am? Like, what do you think of me? And I had it put it into a fictional character. So I have a whole chat that's specifically just this fictional character, because then I will go in and say, okay, what would AI Jen do in this
Yeah.
situation? And it could be something in a personal relationship. It could be something in a work dynamic. It could be like, I don't really know what to do with the situation. And it's spitting it back to me in a fictionalized way where instead of having it tell me exactly what I should do and be very prescriptive, it's
Yeah.
more literative where I'm like, okay, that's an
Yeah.
interesting way I could do that. And then it
Great
just gives me
example.
something to noodle on.
Yeah, well, great example. I don't know if you do this for your show, but I do for mine. So I tend to use Perplexity the most for my show, and that's
Mhm.
the only one I tell people don't pay for any of this stuff, but I will spend $200 a year for Perplexity because it gives me longer, more accurate information as I find. But on Perplexity, they have variations on this and the other language models. They have something called spaces, basically templates. So I've created a lot of spaces for things that I do routinely. Like
Mhm.
you do prep notes for your guests and for
Mhm.
you, right? So I have for the Caring Economy podcast, I have my space. And what I do is I always want 12 to 14 questions. I have my opener question about where you're from, and then the pearls of wisdom question at the end. And it's all around purpose driven lives and purpose driven careers. So now all I have to do is take my guest's bio, place it
Mhm.
in that space, and it spits out my intro and my questions. And it's the lightest touch of editing because it knows me so well.
Yeah.
That's time better spent for me doing other things. And then when I get the transcript from that podcast, I can run it through any of them, but Perplexity again, because I write a column pretty much every week, a 1,200 word column for a newspaper in India called Blitz, and it's about the podcast. So I can pretty quickly get something out to edit and get that done and out. So like you, we're small media companies now, right?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, and we're so much more efficient because I remember when I started my first podcast, which was in 2012, and how much work it was because I had to hire a transcriptionist who actually physically listened to the audio and then typed it up. I had to pay somebody else to create the show notes. I had to pay a graphic designer to do the art. You had to pay an editor to do the audio editing. And now all of that can be done with like a couple of button clicks. Like it is
And they come back to you and it's not always what you want, right? That iterative process is a
correct.
lot longer, drawn out, more expensive. I would rather teach a young publicist to quickly create the PowerPoint in 60 seconds with Copilot and
Mhm,
PowerPoint and get it exactly where I need it, and then task them with, all right, I want you to slot in these images here instead, and I want you to tweak the notes a little bit, and I want you to get out a couple of advanced calls to some of the people who are going to be in the audience. I mean, I'd
mhm,
rather teach the young publicist to get the tools into use versus obsessing on the tools.
yeah.
Because again, the only people that read press releases are, well, the people that don't read them are the journalists, right?
Mhm,
So I
mhm,
don't think it's good to teach it's this effective way to train a young publicist to be writing press releases that are going to go into a vacuum. I'd
mhm,
rather have them figure out the ways, and this is part of the connecting the dots book, to find 3 points of common connection between me, my brand, and this journalist, his, her beat, what have you. Because when you have 3 points of connection, like, oh, your kid has autism too, and oh, I went to the same school, and oh, we had the same, I don't know, fraternity or something. These are the human connections, which you
mhm,
can never replace that with AI. So I'm not concerned that AI is going to replace people,
mhm,
but I do think it creates an opportunity to become more connected and more collaborative and actually be more respectful of the journalists because then you're going to really not be wasting their time.
mhm,
You're going to be positively remembered in their minds. Oh yeah, you're the guy who also grew up in the same hometown or whatever. And yeah, I
mhm,
remember that. And it's going to show that you actually thought about them, or at least you did some research to understand who they are. We can be
mhm,
so tailored now because of AI more than ever. I
mhm.
find that really exciting and more human than what we've had over the past 30 or 40 years.
Yeah, because it's to the human side of AI. It's almost like AI will sounds kind of wild, but will make us more human. Like our interactions are going to be more human versus we're just kind of checked out because we're so, burned out by technology. It's almost like a forcing function in a positive
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. The challenge is for you as a parent. I don't have kids. I do a lot of mentoring and help and love kids. But the challenge is for current generation coming up is you want them to use this technology to be more human, more connected. But unfortunately, because of COVID, social media, polarization, we are all more in a bifurcated swipe left, swipe right, left,
Mhm,
right, progressive conservative world right now. So the challenge, I think, is the opportunity. How can you use this technology to help people realize, oh, you know what, life is one big spectrum, and I
Mhm.
need to find that common ground because that's where the opportunities are, right? Like
Mhm.
everyone's going after the, the undecided voters when these big elections come up because
Mhm.
that small amount is where the
Yeah.
opportunity is.
Yeah.
So I think but I like to tell people that Fred Astaire's partner, Ginger Rogers, she did everything she did, but also backwards and in heels.
Mhm.
We can do this. We can both train our kids in AI and the ethical human centered use of it, and we can help them become more analog,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Instead of digital. And we can also solve a lot of the world's problems. We
Mhm.
got this. Like, I don't think it's an either or. I think it's everything, everywhere, all at once, because if we're morally grounded, purpose driven, and we leverage this technology, we got this. I really
Mhm.
believe this.
Yeah, I'm with you completely. And as we're kind of wrapping up at the end, do you want to share a little bit about your kind of the program that
Yeah.
you're running and how you're helping support people in all of this?
Sure. So I just, it's my nature. I like to help people because people help me and I get joy out of it. So that's why my purpose is making a difference through daily discovery and adventure, because everything I do, including this wonderful sit down with you, is on mission because I'm learning, I'm sharing, and hopefully helping. So AI has now allowed me to scale that even more. So I've created this AI 101 course. I tailor it to individuals anywhere in the world, and I tend to prefer the one-on-ones or two-on-ones, but I've also done large groups. I taught the community foundations of the Hudson Valley, about 76 of their nonprofits. Um, the conference board I've done some corporations, some political campaigns. So I can do large and small, but it's basically 1 hour intro that demystifies just the large language models, touches on the ethics, sustainability, leaves tools behind for people to go deeper if they want. But then I spend the hour mostly working on the issues or topics that are top of mind for them, from, capacity building for a nonprofit or problem solving or crisis related issues. It's very tailored to the individual, and it's always fun to find out what's, keeping people up at night.
Mhm.
Um, but I love giving people the gift of time. Time's the most
Yeah.
precious thing we have after life itself because we have so little left. And so if I can save people time using this technology to finally get that book draft done,
Mhm.
or try to finally think about what that pivot's going to be professionally and how to get there, and get there from a place of insecurity to security, then wow, we're off to the races.
Mhm.
And so I am teaching this mostly over Zoom. And because I'm an internationalist, I'm trying to take it more on the road. So right now I'm working on an initiative to um, I'll be teaching the Rhinebeck Chamber of Commerce in Hudson Valley because we have a home there. And I want to use that as a model to pilot, because then what I want to do is offer it to chambers of commerce around the world. And then also American clubs, like the American Club in Hong Kong, because these are Anglophone and they want to offer programming and training to their members or to
Mhm.
various constituents. So I think that's how I'm going to take this. But in the meanwhile, I'm just it's like the old school Tupperware parties. If you, I don't
Yeah.
know your age, but our parents used it. For mothers in particular, had
Oh,
Tupperware
yeah.
parties where they'd have like everyone comes and sees the Tupperware and then buys.
Mhm.
So it's a referral thing. I
Yeah.
mean, the lady and the son in Bridgehampton, they were referred by my friend Sharon, who referred me to several other people. And
Mhm.
so I like that word of mouth kind of thing. And I like that it's a testament to what I've done the past 35 years of my career, because these are people who have known me and seen me in action and trust me, because the trust piece is really critical with something as powerful as AI. And I've taught some nonprofits here, their communications teams. I'm doing some trustees at one organization. I find it really interesting, Jen, that organizations don't yet have AI training or AI policies in place.
Mm.
Like, we don't need to overthink this. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a standard I created unsolicited and uncommissioned. I created AI policies for two private schools here in New York, just as food for thought. Whether or not they want to adopt it or not is beside the point. I want them to see, like, you don't need a whole committee in 2 years to figure this out. What you need to do is just do it. And then probably lodge it in the employee handbook. But in New York State, for example, I can't tell you how many times in an employee situation you have to do your annual online training for sexual harassment
Mhm.
and all these other things. Why aren't we requiring the same kind of training for AI?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is too important. And so that's kind of where I am right now. I'm scaling it. I'm on LinkedIn, Toby Usnik, and then my website, tobyusnik.com. I have my services there. It's typically 250 a person for an hour, but it depends on the organization and the scale. But I am learning as I go, and I'm telling you, I leave people, I think, really empowered, and we always get some really good wows and laughs and joys along the way, because why settle for anything less than joy is what I say. If you're an employer, you're a parent, an educator, why would you wish for anyone anything less than joy in life? And if you can help them understand where their joy comes from in a really meaningful way for life, and you can close that loop or that distance between your organization, your school, your family, your business around how do you keep it going. As long as you're moving each other closer together, you
Yeah.
are paying it forward. You're leveraging the technology. You're going to get the ripple effect. That's why we're here now. You and I connected on this stuff.
Mhm.
And I'd like to think that some of your listeners are going to tap into this and realize, wow, what am I waiting for? Or at least call Toby or Jen.
Yeah, that is certainly my hope. I really appreciate that. And thank you for sharing your links. I will make sure that this video will also be found on Promote Your Purpose on Substack. So go to Substack, Promote Your Purpose, and I will have all of the links to contact you in that
Awesome.
post so folks can follow you there.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you
Keep on
so
keeping on.
Yeah, you as well. I always love talking to you. So thank you so much for your time today. This was amazing. Thank you.
Likewise. And if you ever want to do